I proposed this paper partly because I wanted to pick Rudy Simpson's brains, which I've been able to do by email, so I'm very grateful to him for the help he's giving me. This is about something that's happening. It's about the plan in Newcastle and Gateshead. I live most of the time, or part of the time anyhow, in Gateshead. I've lived there for a long time. The plan, the development plan, right, which is called the Newcastle Gateshead Core Strategy. And it's about what's going to happen and the way in which population projections have been used in a particular way to justify a particular kind of planning strategy, which I call, let's imitate Ireland because Ireland did so well, didn't it? Right? Okay, in other words, it's all about house building. So it's the example of one core strategy. It's about the use of population projections, actually at this point just reproduction of ONS's population projections as a justification for a particular kind of strategy. Now, I don't think ONS population projections are misleading. I think they may be wrong because of structural factors which are not incorporated in the demographic models, but ONS never pretends that their projections are anything other than the product of a particular kind of application of a demographic model running forward into the future, and they're very cautious, and rightly so, about the implications of these models. So I'm not criticising ONS's population projections, I'm saying about how people have used them in a particular way for a particular purpose. So I think there's some technical issues, which population projections, since I'll show you that over a 6-year period these have projected that the population of this area will go radically down, and then 6 years later they're saying it will go radically up. Okay? There's an issue about which area, which reflects the way in which the abolition of government offices recently, and more historically the abolition of the metropolitan counties, has meant that local authorities are planning rather on the basis of the old-fashioned sport of putting half a dozen rats into a barrel and seeing them fight with each other. Okay? Because they're all competing for the same thing. They're all competing for their idea of population growth for reasons which are to do with their understanding of their taxation base and also potential catastrophes, which we've seen illustrated rather well in the first presentation in this session. I think there's some interesting things to ask about the causal chain of population. I'm interested in what causes things. The components, employment prospects, housing demand versus housing need, because we're in this particular two local authorities, we're proposing over a 20-year period to build houses at twice the rate in the face of what I think has been accurately identified as an oncoming depression, as were built in the 10 years when there was a considerable housing boom and the UK economy looked to be doing rather well. And I think there's some interesting issues about the bizarre political economy of housing land development, since I don't think that most of these planned for houses will ever be built, but actually redesignating land in the green belt, which is owned by developers, as housing land, is very useful for banks which have extended loans to essentially what are a set of zombie companies. Yeah? So I'll go through that particular lot and I'll say something about planning for people, cities for people, which is an alternative. Wrong core strategy. What's wrong with it? This is the last slide I'm going to talk to. It predicts considerable growth in population. From this it infers considerable increase in the number of households. From this it infers considerable increase in effective demand for housing. In other words, there will be people around who will be able to pay for houses. And from this it decides that most of the houses should be built on peripheral greenfield sites. By the way, in also order to justify its housing demand numbers, it wants to continue with the, what's the white moderate word to apply to it? Imbecilically insane and evil policy known as Pathfinder, which was involved in the demolition of very large numbers of fit houses in northern cities, and they're trying to continue with that. So I'll say something about that. And actually this is all to do with work, John Urquhart's here. Both of us are very much involved with a series of community groups, the Green Party in my case in Gateshead, and others who are trying to say there must be an alternative way of doing this, because trying to imitate the Irish economy is not really a very sensible way of planning for the future of post-industrial accommodation. So that's why.